is still underway. RCN officials believe they have the votes required to support industrial action. That could be scheduled to take place before Christmas. The walkouts mean NHS patients could face disruption to operations and appointments amid already record waiting lists. The Prime Minister says he will ensure the UK is at the forefront of the climate change movement as a clean energy superpower ahead of next week's COP27 summit. In a statement, Mr Sunak called the fight against climate change fundamental to our future and said we need to move further and faster to transition to renewable energy. Rishi Sunak will travel to Egypt tomorrow after previously ruling out going to the International Climate Change Conference. The Immigration Minister has condemned what he's calling unacceptable levels of violence at a London immigration centre. Robert Jenrick said those responsible will be held to account and swiftly removed from the country. His comments come after detainees with weapons caused a disturbance during a power outage this morning. No one was injured in the incident at Harmondsworth Immigration Centre in Heathrow. The firebombing of an immigration processing centre in Dover was motivated by an extreme right-wing terrorist ideology, according to police. Counter-terrorism officers have recovered digital media devices as part of their investigation. Andrew Leake from High Wycombe is believed to have thrown up to 3 incendiary devices at the centre last weekend. However, there were no major injuries. The 66-year-old was later found dead by police at a nearby petrol station. An investigation has been launched into Cabinet Office Minister Sir Gavin Williamson over messages he allegedly sent to the then Tory Chief Whip. The messages, obtained by the Sunday Times, appear to show Sir Gavin accusing Wendy Morton of using the death of the Queen to punish senior MPs who were out of favour with Liz Truss's government. Rishi Sunak was reportedly told of Ms Morton's complaint before he appointed Sir Gavin as a minister without portfolio. The Times says the MP has told them he's happy to speak to Wendy. Thousands have marched in central London today calling for a general election due to issues including the rising cost of living. The Britain is Broken protest saw a coalition of trades unions and community organisations marching from Embankment to Trafalgar Square. Organised by the People's Assembly, former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn was among those who spoke, whilst protesters accused the government of being not fit for purpose. Meanwhile, the PM has described inflation as the #1 enemy and vowed to rebuild trust in the government. We're on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. This is GB News, the People's Channel. Time now for those headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Andrew Doyle. And forget Laurel and Hardy, Morecambe and Wise, the two Ronnies, Hale and Pace. Tonight, I'm joined by this generation's Cannon and Ball. It's Sajila Kershi and Toby Young. Let's have a quick look at tomorrow's front pages. First, we're going to start with the Sunday Telegraph. Hunt plots £10 billion tax grab from Better Off. The Chancellor's in talks about halving pension reliefs for millions of higher rate taxpayers. The Observer goes with nurse across the UK vote to launch strike action over pay and novice staff making key asylum decisions. The Sunday Mirror runs with abuse victims' message to ITV. How can you let monster boy George in the jungle? And the front page of the Sunday Times. This is a huge expose on the global hacking network that targets VIPs. And also we've got Twitter founder apologises to staff and says, I love all of you. That would be Jack Dorsey there. Sunday Express goes with Rishi's extra bank holiday for Charles. And migrant crackdown. Also a shake-up of the asylum system could see those making bogus claims deported more quickly. Finally, the Daily Star on Sunday. Beware of the cockroaches. Bug farts are destroying the planet. Usual nonsense from the Daily Star there. And those were your front pages. And we're going to kick off with the Sunday Times now and a global hacking network. Toby, very exciting.
Yeah, well, this particular global hacking network is not a newspaper owned by Rupert Murdoch. This is, in fact, a story in a newspaper owned by Rupert Murdoch. And it's about a gang of Indian hackers who access the files of journalists, politicians and, interestingly, critics of the Qatar World Cup. So private investigators linked to the City of London, apparently using this India-based computer hacking gang to target British businesses, government officials and journalists. So orders went out to target the BBC's political editor, Chris Mason, 3 weeks after he was appointed. The president of Switzerland and his deputy were targeted by this gang. Michel Platini, the former head of European football. Philip Hammond, the former chancellor, he was hacked. He doesn't quite know why, but it was. And it goes on. It's a big story. They've obviously lavished a lot of resources on it. It's an old-fashioned Sunday Times Insight team investigation.
Yeah, I mean, these are big names they're going after here. This is a major...
Exposing.
Yeah, it's huge. Any thoughts on this, Sajila?
Well, I quite like that the hacking gang, there's a gang, right? There's a gang which operates under the name White LNT, or White Int, is run from a fourth-floor apartment in a suburb of the Indian tech city Gurugram.
Yes.
And its mastermind is a 31-year-old called Aditya Jain, and he's an occasional TV cybersecurity pundit who holds down a day job as well as this at an Indian office of the British accountancy firm Deloitte. So basically, spying just doesn't pay what it used to, because it's holding down two jobs.
They have to moonlight.
Spying, I mean, that would have... I mean, why are they not paying him more?
Well, and the consequences are going to be huge. I mean, they're looking at decades in prison, aren't they, Toby?
Yeah.
They are. I mean, the one thing that struck me, I mean, you point out that, you know, these are supposed to be kind of, you know, world-class spies. And so it says that Jonas Ray, who was the gang's most prolific client, he was working for the Swiss corporate intelligence company Diligence Global Business Intelligence, which is owned by Nick Day, a former MI5 officer, and the sister company, blah, 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 it goes on. But it's like there are no cutouts here. Right. I mean, it's so easy to kind of, seemingly, for the Sunday Times to trace back in a series of kind of links this, you know, hacking operation to this quite kind of respectable, well-known city company. It's like, where are the cutouts?
Well, I mean, if this is a high-level operation, it strikes me odd that the Sunday Times could uncover this. You know, they can't be covering their tracks particularly well.
No, yeah, and I would have thought, you know, if you can be exposed this easily by the Sunday Times, then you can't be that good. No. I'm not going to hire you.
No, they deserve to go to jail just for incompetence more than anything. On to the Sunday Mail now. Is far-right terrorism on the rise, Sajila?
OK, so firebombing of Dover Immigration Centre was motivated by extreme right-wing terrorist ideology, police are saying. As you remember, the firebombing happened at an immigration centre in Dover, and the counter-terrorism policing of South East are saying they've got enough evidence to say that it is actually, you know, a right-wing terrorist attack, which was committed by Andrew Leake, who's 66, from High Wycombe in Buckinghamshire. And you may remember he killed himself. He drove himself away. He basically drove quite 200 miles, I think it was, to actually commit the crime, and then he drove to a petrol station and killed himself there. And then he was shouting as he laughed while he carried out the attack. And then he basically shouted to some of the coach drivers that were transporting the migrants, "Do you know what you're doing? Your children should be raped and killed."
So, I mean, that makes it very clear what the motivations are. However, you know, there's all sorts of things there, like the fact that he was laughing while he was doing it. There's the fact that he killed himself. There's a mention here of the fact that he had lost a son. He's had serious mental health issues, Toby. Is this the case that this is a madman? Well,
it's interesting, isn't it, that whenever an Islamist terrorist blows something up, the focus is always on his mental health problems, not the extremist ideology he
I would
subscribes
disagree
to.
with that, Toby.
Really?
Actually, I think it's actually not taken into the equation of mental health. I think that the fact that they did mention it, of course it's mental health, but I think they don't. I think they just make it like it is a terrorist attack. And that therefore there must be it's never an individual attacking on themselves. It's got to be loads of people around him.
And how relevant is this really when it comes to because you can be mentally unwell and also an extremist.
Yeah, you can be both. We can be.
Yeah, I don't think it excuses
it's a sort of slightly false dichotomy, isn't it? But it's slightly odd, I think, that in this case, they've concluded that even though I think what's various bits of evidence to suggest that he wasn't quite all there. I mean, he was a joker-obsessed, far-right supporting cannabis smoker who suffered from mental health issues and had his penis removed Because of cancer.
Because of cancer, yes.
But nonetheless, Tim Jakes, the Senior National Coordinator for Counter-Terrorism Policing, said, after considering the evidence collected so far in this case, whilst there are strong indications that mental health was likely a factor, I'm satisfied that the suspect's actions were primarily driven by an extremist ideology. It's like, well, how do you make up your mind about that?
How do you know?
I kind of have some sympathy for this guy, and I think this is where it's much deeper. It's the rhetoric that we get that, you know, if you are in that downtrodden place, and then you always look to someone to blame, and when everybody, including the government, I know we've got a story coming out, like, who are blaming the migrants, and they are the issue, they're the ones that are doing, you know, causing this disruption in your life.
Yes.
That's not even an ideology. That's what historically people have done.
So scapegoating.
Yeah, and it's just blaming someone else.
Well, we're going to move on to Sunday's I paper, and Rishi is sticking up for Suella.
Yes, so he has defended her use of the word invasion to describe the overwhelming number of small boats crossing the English Channel.
Didn't he say he wouldn't use that word himself?
He did, yes. So it's not a particularly robust defence because, yes, he says he wouldn't use that word himself.
Yes.
But he says she was just trying to convey the scale of the challenge, and it wasn't supposed to be a racist dog whistle. I don't quite understand this argument that the word invasion is a racist dog whistle, because when you say invasion in the context of Britain, I think of the Vikings. Why is it racist to compare immigrants to Danes? I mean, that's sort of a bit unfair on the Danes.
Well, Sajila, I mean, when she says invasion, no, it wasn't a pre-prepared speech.
No, she does what I do. It's like the first thing that comes to my head, and I come out with it, and you think, oh God, I shouldn't have said that. Of course, that's what she's done. However, invasion does have a lot of connotations because, you know, growing up, that was always seen as, the immigrants are invading. And immigrants have always been. So governments always use wars, and they use immigration to win elections. And then this is no different. So when I was young, it was, they all get Casio watches when they come here. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm still waiting for my Casio watch.
Well, I can get you a Casio watch.
Yeah, give me a Casio watch.
But also, Toby, I mean, invasion does imply... I mean, it has connotations of malevolence, doesn't it? Someone wants to encroach, come in and take over, you know, so it does have those. So I would imagine it does have those connotations. I don't think of the Vikings necessarily. I think of a force, a malevolent force that wants to take over and cause trouble.
I think the Vikings were probably quite malevolent, but I don't think of it as depicting a particular race or conjuring up, you know, a demonised sense of foreigners.
Yes.
I do think it just gives the impression, like, you know, an invasion of termites in your home. It might be you're talking about, you know,
equally negative.
Well, I suppose that would probably be even worse. But I mean,
yes, it would be.
It doesn't suggest malevolence or they want to take over exactly. It just suggests an overwhelming problem that's going to be very difficult to deal with, doesn't it?
But it also feels like Suella Braverman and Priti Patel, they've been had charges of racism levelled against them, but it seems unlikely, doesn't it, given that they themselves are
what's happening is the
minority
first
people.
generation of immigrants came over, they produced another generation who are now deciding to kick out the new generation of immigrants. So it's all working, it's all the circle of life, really.
Oh, OK. Well, not the sort of thing you'd see in The Lion King, though, that story. Let's move on now to Observer. And big events in the capital today. Sajila, have you got this one?
So, yeah, there was that. I'm surprised I didn't know about this. Normally I would attend one of these things. So thousands attend London rally to demand general election. So the protest was by the People's Assembly campaign group, also calling for action on cost of living crisis.
Yes.
Obviously, everyone's really, really angry. And it's not unreasonable to ask for it. The protest, called Britain is Broken, kind of, you know, sort of does what it says on the tin, was organised by these people and supported by groups including the CND, Unite, Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion. They need a more catchier kind of little encompassing...
They do, but again, it's one of these protests that draws together all sorts of different activist groups with different agendas. Austerity seemed to be the most important thing to hear. But
austerity is a massive thing. The speakers were Mick Lynch, General Secretary, as we know, you know, they were going to have a strike, but now they decided to cancel it, so which is really nice in time for the protest.
And Corbyn was there as well, wasn't he?
Of course. It felt to me as though the timing was a bit off. I mean, because we're not really in a period of austerity. I mean, the government has just borrowed hundreds of billions of pounds to pay people to stay at home and not to work. Liz Truss, before she was deposed, announced a help package for energy bills, which could have cost upwards of 200 billion. The austerity package is going to be announced next week with the autumn statement. So they got their timing slightly wrong there. Plus, one thing that did become clear was that Mick Lynch, the General Secretary of the Rail, Maritime and Transport Union, who called off their expected strike yesterday, was there in a speaker. Presumably, the reason they called off the strike was so people could come to the demo in London.
Protest. Oh, well, that's interesting. But do you think, though, Toby, I mean, their call for a general election, that's not unreasonable, is it? Given that we have a Prime Minister who doesn't have the mandate that Boris Johnson had. I mean, I know they don't have to have an election until 2024. Wouldn't the ethical thing, the moral thing be to do so?
Well, I thought, imagining that if there's a change of government, let's say there was a general election tomorrow and Keir Starmer's Labour Party win an overwhelming majority, I'm not sure they're going to do much different to what Jeremy Hunt is about to do. I mean, the fact is we are at the beck and call of the bond markets, and if we borrow any more money, then gilt yields are going to rise and the country's going to go bankrupt. So, I mean, imagining that we'll be in a less austere period and we can increase public expenditure to kind of lavish levels of change of government is naive.
I'm sure that...
I agree with you in that.
A change of government isn't necessarily going to make things better. But the principle of the general election under these circumstances, that seems sound to me. What do you think, Sajila?
I agree with you that it's an ethical thing to do. I also concur with you that it doesn't mean to say that Keir Starmer, and I am a Labour girl, but that he's going to do any better because the country's just in a mess and someone's got to clear it up. And it's a thankless job.
I think one last point is, yes, the Conservatives have changed leader midstream, but that hasn't triggered an election when Labour have done it. So when Brown replaced Tony Blair, I think the Tories said there should be a general election, and they told them to get on their bikes. And and it happened before with Callaghan and Wilson, and it happened with Margaret Thatcher and John Major. So it's happened many times. It doesn't automatically trigger a general election.
It doesn't make the principle wrong, though, just because the precedent isn't there. Okay. Anyway, the Observer next, and now, what's this? Well, this is the French story about the far right. Sajila.
Oh, OK. So far-right National Rally elects a new president to replace Le Pen. So Le Pen is stepping down.
Yes.
And has had this protégé for many years called Jordan Bardella, who's only 27 years old. He looks like a
baby,
a boy child.
Yes.
Honestly, he's like my kid. And he's not just a protégé, but he joined when he was 16.
Yes.
And not for what is the equivalent of the National Front, their RN. Not for that, but for Le Pen.
Yes.
Like, obviously, there's some sort of relationship there. I don't mean like anything dodgy, but just that, he looks up to her, like I do to you, Andrew, like a bit of a mentor. So she's got him in power. And it's they're trying to get away from this really extreme right-wing racist kind of vibe that they used to have before when her father was in. And I think this is actually quite a smart move on her part. Now, this kid, and I will say kid because he's very young, has got a heritage which is Italian immigrant and also Algerian. Now, Algerian and all the like Moroccans and Tunisians are seen, they're seen as problematic immigrants in France. And so to have him with that heritage is actually quite smart because then you can't accuse him of.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
But certainly, this is the latest step in a long line of Marine Le Pen's attempts to clean up the image of the Front National. Well, for a start, changing the name of the Front National. But Toby, is this working? Because only the other week, one of its MPs was suspended from Parliament for a racist outburst. That doesn't happen with most parties, does it?
I imagine that set back their laundering project certainly a few months. But what's interesting is that this young man, as you say, he's only 27, is going out with Marine Le Pen's niece.
Ooh. Okay.
And, his main rival for the leadership of the National Rally was Louis Alliot, who is Pen's former partner. So she's sort of keeping it in the family.
She really is, isn't she?
They're almost like the Bushes of French politics.
It feels like the mafia. Yeah.
It is a bit mafia.
Well, is this a bit like Giorgia Meloni? And are we seeing this populism, this right-wing populism, sort of spreading across Europe? Do you think that's happening, Toby?
Well, it'll be interesting to see how the National Rally does at the next French presidential election. But I don't think she's going to not be the presidential candidate for her party.
But they have a momentum.
Second in command.
I mean, the legislative elections earlier in the year, they gained they won a record 89 seats.
Yeah.
The momentum seems to be on their side. And why would that be? Why is that happening in France?
Well, it's happening in part because of the cost of living crisis. It's happening because of rising levels of crime. it's happening because people are unhappy with President Macron and see him as this kind of global centrist who's kind of representing the interests of investment bankers like what he used to be.
Yes.
The same reasons you see, populist movements succeeding in other parts of the
But they
world.
also seem successfully poaching a lot of traditionally left-wing votes as well. This seems to be happening
that is
too.
disturbing, isn't it? And and that's actually happening globally. I don't think
Right.
that's just France or us. Actually, we've turning now. Because of what's
Yes.
the right are doing at the moment. It's kind of turning the tide. But I love that they think that is different. I mean, have the RN really changed? They once again were at the centre of racist row, as you say, last week. And if we're shouting out, go back to Africa. So yeah, have they changed?
Well, I mean, it was the thing is having a Le Pen in charge of the party is always going to, for many voters, be a deal breaker, isn't it? It's going to be a turn-off. They're just not going to vote for a Le Pen.
Well, she did pretty well. I mean, she is, I think, going to be the presidential candidate in the next French presidential election, and she seems to be increasing her vote share each time she runs. So I wouldn't rule out her becoming the next president.
OK, well, Sunday Express now, and the second most surprising pairing I've heard today, and you two are the first, obviously. Toby, what's this one about?
This is a story that the drones that Iran is supplying to Russia, and which Russia is deploying in Ukraine, have, according to the Express, been built with Western help. Actually, it's not according to the Express, it's according to the investigative division of US-backed Radio Free Europe. But they're saying these mass-produced Iranian combat drones contain parts that are made in both the United States and the European Union and in Hong Kong.
But is that really surprising? I mean, these kind of things are manufactured all over the world and they get exchanged, and it doesn't strike me as that.
Well, it's like a Wham song, bad boys stick together, and so all the baddies, the Iranians, the Russians, all the ones that are kind of like on the peripherals that we just see them as the bad guys, they all kind of help each other out, don't they?
I don't know that Wham song. Is that a B-side?
It might be a B-side.
OK, yeah, I'm not that big a fan. God love him. OK, well, I think that's enough for part one. But coming up, we have got The Wrath of the New King. That's not a Tolkien novel, by the way. Gary Neville versus Ian Hislop, and plenty of serotonin. See you in 3 minutes.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
On Mark Dolan tonight, we have a simple plan, which is to inform, stimulate, and entertain in equal measure. It's all about getting your opinions on the national television airwaves. I love my viewer emails, mark@gbnews.uk. So do join me every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for big guests, big opinions, and a big presenter. 6'5", don't you know? See you then on GB News.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Andrew Doyle with the very glam-looking Sajila Kershi and someone who could have made a bit more of an effort, let's face it, it's Toby Young. Could have at least put on a tie there, Toby. Sunday Mirror now. The King's Fury. Sounds like the forgotten Fourth Lord of the Rings book.
Oh, it does, doesn't it? Well, The King's Fury, as Donald Trump said, Kate had herself to blame over topless snaps. Now, this you might think this has happened again, but it hasn't. This is referring to an old incident back in 2012.
So the paparazzi took pictures of Kate on holiday nude.
On a holiday when she was topless. And this is in Christopher Anderson's upcoming biography, The King, The Life of Charles III. They should replace that with King Charles III now, shouldn't they, really? But anyway, so Prince William, Prince Harry and King Charles apparently exploded into torrents of profanity. I love that. Torrents of profanity.
Very dramatic.
Yeah, I love it. And this is after Donald Trump had written about Kate Middleton's topless photo scandal. And basically he tweeted, and I'm assuming this is before he got banned on Twitter. Maybe this is why.
Well, this was 4 years before he was president.
4 years before he got banned. The 76-year-old tweeted that Kate Middleton is great, but she shouldn't be sunbathing in the nude, only herself to blame. Who wouldn't take Kate's picture and make lots of money if she does the nude sunbathing thing? Come on, Kate.
Now,
I do not want to agree with anything Trump says. I'm not a Trump fan, but I kind of see his point in a way. These are royal family, right? I know you're going on holiday, but I mean, I don't get my jubblies out. Like, I don't, I'm not anybody. So why would you do that, knowing that someone?
Well, I think I'm not usually one to defend the royals, but I think it was on a private beach and there wasn't anyone for miles around, and the paparazzi got the picture because they rented a boat and kind of had an incredibly powerful telephoto lens, and even then the pictures were very blurry. I think I remember them.
But Toby,
so I'm not sure they were sort of asking for it.
But why they're not asking for it? But I'm just, and I certainly wasn't saying that. Let's crack that one as well. I wasn't saying that, but I'm just saying that it's like when you know that you are photographed like 24/7.
Yes.
You know, William has got his mother who's had the same thing. And of course, he's still angry at Trump because I didn't know he tried to pursue his mother. So he relentlessly went after her and he said, oh, but she needs to have a... and obviously she kept rebuking him, like saying no. And then he says, as long as she has an AIDS test, or was it?
He said he could have nailed her if I wanted to. That's what Trump said.
Yeah, go dream in your dreams, Trump.
I mean, this is bizarre. I mean, Toby, you know a few things about old tweets being dug up and stuff like this. You know, this does happen, doesn't it? But it's not. Why is anyone interested or surprised that Trump tweeted a few sort of barbed things? Of course he did.
Yeah, I guess the story isn't that Trump reacted in the way he did. I guess the story is that who would have thunk it? Prince William, Prince Harry and King Charles sometimes swear.
Right, OK.
That was a torrent of expletives when Trump said this thing. One thing that struck me about this story was that I looked up Christopher Anderson's new forthcoming Fury of the King biography, and he's got a better story, which is apparently when he was Prince Charles, he would employ members of his staff to look after his teddy bear long into his adult life, and he would only employ this one woman to kind of, his old nanny would be the only person trusted to sew up his teddy bear when the teddy bear was in need of repair, and he treated it like a kind of major surgery to one of his children. He was just obsessed, apparently, with this ancient, disintegrating teddy bear.
Does he still have it? Do we know?
I don't know. Good question.
Because, I mean, I do know adults are very attached to their teddy bears, aren't they?
I think that's what kind of warmed me to him.
I think that's endearing?
I think there's obviously some trauma there that we don't know about. Yeah, that's quite sweet.
Well, I mean, not surprising that the royal family swear. Aristocrats always swear, I mean, for goodness sake. Anyway, we're going to go on now to the Sunday Express. And how much moral leadership should we be expecting, Toby?
This is the story about Ian Hislop grilling Gary Neville, who was the host of Had I Got News for You?
Yes.
Hislop decided to haul him over the coals about the fact that even though Gary's been very critical of the Tory government and is often critical of various moral shortcomings of people like Boris and the rest of it, he is taking the Qatari shilling. He's agreed to be a commentator on Qatari TV during the World Cup. So Hislop asked him how he defended himself.
We actually do have the clip of this here, so let's have a look at what was said.
Either highlight the issues and challenges in these countries and speak about them, or you basically don't say anything, you stay back home and don't go. And I've always said we should challenge them.
There's another option. You stay at home and highlight the abuses. You don't have to go and take the Qataris' money.
I mean, they really did put him on the spot there, but doesn't he have a point, Gary Neville, when he's saying, he's going to go out there, that he might raise the issues from that platform? Might that not be more powerful?
But he didn't. I mean, that would have been a slightly better argument, but he didn't really make that argument. I mean, if you listen carefully to what he said there, and I look back over it, he said that either you go to Qatar where you can highlight the issues, or you stay at home and do nothing.
Yeah.
So the reason he was going is because if he stayed at home, he wouldn't be able to draw attention to them. But because he's going, he can. But actually, as Ian Hislop said, you could just not take the money, stay at home and still highlight.
But someone's going to take this money. Someone's going to do this job.
This is the thing. Someone will take the money eventually. But what a stupid thing to do, to go on that, because anybody who goes on that, did he honestly think that they weren't going to have a pop? Has he never watched the show? Like, what a daft thing to do.
They probably did it for the money.
Right? Did it for the money.
I don't think they pay very much for that show.
No, I think they...
Oh, do they?
I think the hosts get, about 5-10 grand.
Oh, OK. Oh, fair enough. I got that wrong,
that's a little league there.
But, I mean, but the thing about that is, surely the people that you should be levelling the criticism against is, well, firstly, the Qatari government, the people who are involved with the death of those people who built the stadiums, that kind of thing. Or, indeed, why is it even being held there?
Why is it being held there? This is the thing. It's like, there's no point in crying over spilt milk. You've done the deal, and it was a dirty deal. Who did it? Why did they do it? And they need to be accountable, really.
Yeah, but Toby, it sounds like you think
it slightly sticks in my craw when footballers and ex-footballers and people involved in professional football set themselves up as moral paragons and campaign against issues like homophobia, racism, slavery, and then, without seeming to bat an eyelid, then all bugger off to Qatar to take the Qatari shilling, in spite of the fact that homosexuality is still, punishable by death in Qatar, and the stadiums themselves were probably built in part by slaves. It just seems extraordinarily hypocritical.
Fair enough. So we're going to move on now to The Observer once more. And has the link between serotonin and depression finally been established?
Well, not quite. So a study finds first direct evidence of a link between serotonin and depression. So it's not a conclusive 100%, but they have seen some findings that serotonin, and let's face it, serotonin controls your mood, and it's responsible. It's called the happy kind of, gene, as it were. It regulates your sleep, it helps you think, and it controls your sexual desire as well. Now, the reason why I think serotonin might be partly a part of this, which is what this article says, is that during lockdown, obviously, a lot of us were lacking all these. And the things that you need to kind of create serotonin, exercise, good diet, sleeping patterns well, and not have stress. So all these things were kind of compounded. And then we did have a rise in mental health issues with depression. But that doesn't account, and it's, it's kind of stating that, it doesn't really account for everyone, like trauma, psychological issues and stuff. But it's a first direct evidence that the release of serotonin is blunted by the brains of people with depression, and they did do a study which tested this theory out, and it shows that yes, perhaps lack of serotonin will. It's inclusive for everyone. Because everyone has got different things going on when they have depression.
Any thoughts on this, Toby?
Well, I did on page 2 of the story. It mentions the size of the treatment group, and it only involved 17 patients with major depressive disorders, and there were 20 healthy volunteers in the control group. So the study lacks statistical power.
OK, well, very interesting. We're going to move on now. This is about filling Jeremy Hunt's black hole. Toby.
Yes, so it's been suggested that if Jeremy Hunt is going to fill this £50 billion black hole in the public finances, one way to do it, instead of raising taxes or cutting public expenditure, particularly on the NHS, although he has said I think he's going to ring-fence spending on the NHS, one way to do it would be to scrap the second phase of HS2.
What is the second phase of HS2? What would that be?
Well, it's the bit. The first phase, I think, is the bit that goes from London to Birmingham and a few other places. And I think phase 2 is Birmingham to Manchester and.
But we've sunk so much money into this thing. I mean, and they're saying now that it's really not needed. They're talking here about. It's basically the justification for the cost has been undermined by post-COVID travel demand because it's gone well down. People are working from home more.
Yeah, that's one argument. But I guess, you know, if travelling by train became a bit faster and a bit more comfortable, maybe travel demand would go up again. I mean, one interesting thing is that they're not the initial estimate for phase 2 of HS2 was 26 billion.
Yes.
How do they get to 50? Well, they say the builders have horribly underestimated how much it's likely to cost. And I think I know those builders. They did my kitchen last year.
Sajida, do you think it's been a bit...
Still doing your kitchen.
Has it been a bit of a white elephant, this?
Yeah, I mean, really save money. Don't build it. Just get the megabus, £5, you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Big fan of the megabus. Anyway, we're going to move on. Part 2 is now over, but coming up, we've got Tarantino's disdain for superhero movies, how kinky people in the Middle Ages were, and a question I often think about, why are so many young men freezing their sperm? See you in a minute.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Are authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime? With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akua, on Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank and, of course, fun every Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Every Saturday at 2 o'clock, join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain. I'm not afraid to give you a platform and say it how it is.
Come on, make the case. Something like this is very, very important to people.
And we're always up for a laugh on this show.
God, honestly, you'd think there were no problems in the world.
Real Britain, every Saturday on GB News.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales
And Northern Ireland.
On TV.
on radio, and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's
News channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look through Sunday's newspapers. I'm still Andrew Doyle, she's still Sajila Kershi, and hopefully he's still Toby Young. And the Mail on Sunday has got this story now about Quentin Tarantino's disdain for the state of modern cinema. Do you share his view, Toby? What's it about?
Well, he's quite rude about blockbusters. No,
Yes.
about superhero movies.
Yes.
He says that superhero movies dominate. There's not enough room for more artistic movies. He himself wouldn't dream of directing one because he's not a hired hand and he's not looking for a job. Blah blah blah. And you know, when Scorsese said more or less the same thing.
Yes.
3 years ago, I thought, you know, you're being a bit snobbish. What's wrong with these movies? Some of them are actually a lot better than yours. And but actually now I think, you know, most superhero movies have jumped the shark.
It's getting a bit boring, isn't it?
It's a bit boring, yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness,
Yeah.
a bit rubbish. The latest Thor movie, almost unwatchably bad. So I'm now beginning to have some sympathy with the
Well, you know,
anti-superhero movie crusade.
One of the big ones was the Batman, and I actually quite liked the Batman because it didn't have that sort of pretentious... The Christopher Nolan ones had this very pretentious sense that they were high art or something. It's a guy in a cape flying around. You know, that's always going to be silly.
That is. And actually, superhero obsession, I think it's going to stay with us as long as grown men read graphic novels.
You're not a fan of that?
Comics.
Not a fan?
No.
No.
I have some history with that, and you know, boyfriends and partners who go to the comic book shops every Thursday.
It does get tedious though when all of the major blockbusters and the big action films are all about the same kind of thing. You know, can't Hollywood just... It's like they're repeating the formula to death. They're going to flog this dead horse until they make as much money as possible.
Yeah, it felt like, I mean, I was a big fan of the kind of Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
And it should have ended with Endgame. That was the perfect ending. All the biggest actors bowed out at that point.
Yeah.
And it's just been a kind of afterthought after that. They are, you say, they're flogging it to death.
Do you think filmmakers are just losing their imagination? I mean, we're getting so many remakes and so many prequels, and I just... there's nothing really that strikes me as innovative, moving things forward. It's all very, very, you know, mundane.
It feels like television's where the action is now.
Yeah, absolutely. Except, of course, television streaming services can be quite preachy with their TV shows.
They can be.
So that's not so interesting either. Anyway, we're going to move on to this next story. This is The Star on Sunday. It turns out society has been sexually degenerate years before the advent of Tinder and Grindr.
Yes, well, apparently people in the Middle Ages were far kinkier than we think and created public sex sheds.
Public sex sheds?
Public sex shed. So, well, people in the Middle Ages, as we know, are kinky, tend to get more kinky in the Middle Ages. You would know, Toby. They go to more swinging parties, go dogging, and, you know...
Are you accusing Toby of dogging?
Well, I'm just saying that the generation of the Middle Ages. But I don't speak about the Middle Age men. I'm talking about the Middle Age, you know, Middle Ages in the olden days.
We're talking about the medieval period, and this is a historian who's talking about how they were kinkier than we suppose. But do we really suppose that they were sexless? I don't think so.
No, I think that I would have imagined them to be a bit more animalistic and kind of, you know, romping everywhere. Back then they said public sex was more of a thing because you had situations where the lower classes, like upstairs and downstairs, so the downstairs might be all sleeping in one room. So you had no choice but to kind of have sex with each other in the same room. And that even extended to like the higher ranking sort of, you know, people with the four-poster beds. And it said the four-poster bed, it was still like being in a tent next to people. And the four-poster bed, if you've got a big room, who's sleeping in that room?
I know, I didn't get that.
No.
You
Understand
don't have
that
like a
doesn't make sense, really.
No, and she says she says about the medieval period. We see a lot of serving people, for example, having sex in fields or quiet places where they knew other people weren't around. It's like, how does she know that?
How on earth does she know that?
What is the documentary evidence that is actually true?
I mean, this is a bizarre one. This idea that sort of, people from the past were sort of innocent or... I mean, why would anyone suppose they were?
Yeah, the headline is, people in the past had sex.
People in the past had sex, of course they did.
They can still have sex without porn, and they had real sex without the porn. But in places like Prague, did you see this, Toby? Like the Prague, where they've got priests that built sort of wooden sheds that they would rent out to people so they could have sex. So basically, they've created a knocking shop, like the church has created a knocking shop.
Well, you know.
One thing that jumped out at me, may not have jumped out at you, Sajila, was that one of the forms of sex this expert claims that was very popular in courtly circles was interfemoral sex.
Google that.
I had to Google it too.
Google it.
Presumably Andrew did not have to Google it.
I presume we're not going to go into the graphic details.
No, but it's to do with thighs and a male part of the anatomy.
Well, there we go. Look, this doesn't surprise me at all. If you read Utopia, Sir Thomas More's Utopia, which is, early 1500s, he has a whole section where he says that couples should see each other naked before they marry so that they can check out if they like the body or not. And he was a saint.
Right.
So, yes. Doesn't surprise me at all. Anyway, we're going to move on now to this next headline that often keeps me up at night. Toby, why are so many young men freezing their sperm?
Yes, well, oddly, the beginning of the story links it with a decline in male fertility.
Because I thought males could be fertile up to in their 80s. It just goes on and on.
And if there's something a bit dodgy about your sperm and you're not producing many swimmers, why would you freeze it? It seems a bit odd, but it's really about the rise of these male reproductive clinics, an industry which will supposedly be worth £2.8 billion by 2031. And they, in addition to treating men who are kind of underperforming in the sperm department, they also freeze the sperm of overperforming younger men who want to rely on their high-quality sperm later in life. There was one quite funny detail I found. I don't know whether it was deliberate or not, but one of the chaps, a Lebanese-Canadian Harvard graduate, who founded one of these big billion-dollar sperm companies based in Boston, he became interested in the subject when he spilt a cup of scalding coffee on his genitals and ended up with second-degree burns. And apparently that didn't, in fact, impede his sperm count. But when she was interviewing him over iced tea in New York's West Village. She didn't want to risk.
Of course not. No one's experienced that.
Incident.
I mean, Sajila, we've heard a lot about women harvesting their eggs, and this is kind of an old thing. So,
I've got so many, a comedy world is full of women who have, are being freezing their eggs or talking about, doing something to kind of make sure that they have a longer time gap. And part of me was a little bit, good. It's because when there's an issue, it's always blamed on the woman. It's always assumed that the woman's got something wrong with her. So I think this is, but also made me think, what is making them infertile? And I wonder if it's linked to the rise of trans women. Do you know what I mean? I wonder if there is definitely, maybe a huge change in biology that we haven't looked at.
Yeah, there is. It does say in here what the possible causes.
What are they, Toby?
Rising infertility are, and
is it evolutionary?
Speculation. It's the chemical additives found in everyday items such as cosmetics, non-stick frying pans, and food packaging.
Oh,
so
so the frying pans are to blame.
The frying pans, and
you know what?
When you're opening your Sainsbury's sandwiches, put your gloves on because you could end up with a low sperm count if you touch the packaging.
It won't matter because we'll all be cloned in about 30 decades, 30 years. Anyway, we're going to move on now. What is this about brown bananas? Sajila?
Oh, OK, so this is in the Sunday Times. A DNA bid to banish brown bananas. Now, bananas obviously go bad quickly. Never put them in the fridge, by the way. And we're very fussy when we buy bananas. A laboratory in Norwich, who knew that was be a place where we talk about bananas? So scientists believe that they're on the cusp of producing a banana that does not go brown.
So like an immortal banana?
And an immortal banana. And first of all, I was freaked out by this. I was like, I don't want people messing chemically things into my bananas. But then actually, because we've got shortage of food and the fact that we spend so much transporting these bananas, in fact, there is in the UK import 5 billion per year, 22 million tonnes annually.
Oh, look, that's the number of bananas I throw out because they go brown.
Really?
I always end up just having to throw them in the bin.
Don't you know you can make banana bread out of them?
Oh,
that's what we do in our house.
Oh, OK.
So,
I don't cook. I don't think I could do that. It wouldn't make sense. But look, they're doing other things. Though, like it says that they're making drought-resistant wheat and creating chickens that are immune to bird flu. Aren't they playing God?
They are playing God, and I don't agree with that. But the bananas, I'm happy with the bananas because it means less acreage used to grow them, less fertilisers and pesticides used, fewer shipped bananas, which means it's good for the environment. And personally, I buy my bananas when they are really, really green.
Yes.
And then ripen at home. And also, it's better for diabetes to have them.
I think just eat the bananas quicker. That would be the solution.
I think you're being slightly blasé about this. I do think that genetically modified food products are generally a good idea, and one of the benefits of being out of the EU is we're not constrained by the restrictions on genetically modified foods. And we can do an enormous amount to alleviate starvation through.
Well, there's that. But would you go so far with like genetically modified meat and that kind of thing, or meat that's grown in a lab?
Well, it might be. I mean, it might be a way of reducing the suffering of animals if that's a priority. I think we're coming on to that.
Oh, blimey, okay.
Do you want your chickens to have a COVID jab? Is that what you want? That's where we're going to go, you know.
I wouldn't touch it.
Well, Toby, they're raising some interesting ethical issues on what I thought was just a flippant story. Good for him. Anyway, we're going to move now to the Sunday Telegraph and Wayne Rooney. What's this about? What's this one? Oh, sorry, no, that's just something in the article saying, did Wayne Rooney write this headline? That's not something I understand, because I don't really know who Wayne Rooney is.
Oh, I get it, yeah.
What is it?
Well, the headline is, nothing stirs you like an old banger. And, of course, Wayne Rooney was rumoured to have had an affair with a grandmother.
Oh, well, I'd never heard that.
OK.
No, so it made no sense to me whatsoever. Go on.
This story is about the increasing popularity of what really were starter cars in the 1980s and 1990s, like Ford Fiestas, VW Polos and Peugeot 205s.
So just knackered old cars?
Knackered old cars from the 80s and 90s are apparently coming back into fashion, partly because of the supply chain problems with the sale of new cars, so people are looking increasingly at second-hand cars.
Yes.
And apparently these vintage, but not so vintage, they are actually old bangers, cars are very popular. And you can actually pay a firm to kind of trick out, give your kind of old Peugeot 205 a glow-up. And apparently some of these tricked-up 205s cost upwards of £51,000.
But why? Why are they so popular?
I used to have a Peugeot 205, and believe me, I cannot imagine why anyone would want to spend £51,000 on one.
Because you could get a brand-new car of quite a high level for that.
You could, yeah.
You know, I don't know much about cars.
Second-hand Tesla. Why would you want a Peugeot 205?
What do you think,
I don't get this right. So Nick Bailey from the West Midlands in this article says bought his 1991 Peugeot 205 18 months ago, finally realising his teenage dream. Mate, you're not a teenager now. You're a grown man.
Right.
What are you going to do? Play your cassettes in the car?
Well,
he says he plays his cassettes in the car.
But also the cassettes are coming back. You know, people are, and I don't know why. It's nostalgia, isn't it? It's retro. That's basically what it is.
Why not take that, guys, into other areas like relationships? Why is it that you always have to have a younger model?
Yes.
No, they're going for the older models here.
It's the older model.
Could be, you know, if they take that theory into relationships, that could be a good thing, right?
It could be good.
If they won't, though.
Sunday Mail once more, and Twitter's founder has seller's remorse. Sajida, this is Jack Dorsey, right?
Oh, so Twitter founder Jack Dorsey. Oh, gosh. Talk about someone getting the guilt, right? So Jack Dorsey says sorry to current and ex-employees after Elon Musk fired half of social media giant's staff and says he grew the company too quickly, but he gets to keep his £1 billion in shares. So that's not really a great apology for all those poor employees.
Just to clarify, Elon Musk's come into Twitter, he's gone on a firing spree, and he's just basically slaughtered half of the staff, including some of the top executives and the woman who was responsible for Donald Trump being booted off the platform. What do you think of this, Toby?
It's quite odd that Jack Dorsey has expressed sympathy and given his condolences to those people that were fired and takes responsibility for having grown the company too quickly. So clearly sort of acknowledging that they were employing too many people. But it's odd that he's sort of, because he's one of the investors in Twitter. He didn't sell his stake. He still owns about, 1% of the company. He's a partner of Elon Musk. So he seems to be wanting to have his cake and eat it here.
Elon Musk hasn't replied to this. He normally does, doesn't he, when someone mentions it?
But what he did was he ordered the managers and workers with a company that basically was kind of putting where can we cut £500 million pounds annually? So if you can do that, then you get to keep the jobs, which is an impossible task for anyone to kind of...
I see a lot of people are angry about Elon Musk. He's going to get people with blue check marks to have to pay to retain their blue check marks. What do you make of that, Toby?
Yeah, I think I can't get worked up about it. I mean, I think at the moment the system is, if you're approved by a kind of secret committee inside the company, you get a blue tick.
Exactly.
And that doesn't feel very democratic. And also, and if it is going to be the digital town square, which is what Elon Musk wants it to be, then you don't want the kind of VIPs, the people kind of designated as somehow the most important on the platform, to be decided by a kind of secret cabal of kind of woke 20-something.
It feels like very hierarchical, doesn't it? And often they're just baffling decisions they make. They verify their mates, basically, you know?
It's really odd. I mean, and I think, generally speaking, if you're centre-left, you're much more likely to have a blue tick than if you're centre-right.
Exactly. Sajila.
Well, I don't have a blue tick, and I'd like one, please, Mr. Musk.
Well, now you can get one. It's $8 a month.
But, no, can I just say, like, we've got all these investors and partners. So obviously, he's getting, just as you say, keeping his part in there. But he's also joined by other investors, like the Saudi Prince of Alaouid bin Talal and Qatar's investment authority as major investors. Do we then still think Musk is great if he's got all these kind of dodgy investors as well?
Well, whether we think Musk is great or not, I suppose look, no one's saying that he's perfect.
Yeah.
But what they are saying is that he's coming to this company which has a really bad track record of censoring people that it just doesn't agree with, and he's going to clean, and he's been cleaning a lot of these people out. I mean, that to me strikes me as a good thing. Toby, final word to you because we don't have much time.
Yeah, I think that is a good thing, and I completely support Musk's mission to try and turn it into a kind of broader free speech platform, and I wish him Godspeed.
Yep, OK, well, fair enough. There we are. That's all we have time for. Thank you to my brilliant guests, Toby Young and Sajila Kershi. And tomorrow, of course, Mark Dolan will be in the hot seat, and he'll be joined by Josh Howie and Catherine Henson. And join me tomorrow for Free Speech Nation at 7 o'clock. I'll see you there. Farewell.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's
news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday on GB News. Join my new show, Bev Turner Today, from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday on GB News, on TV, on radio and online.
Good evening, welcome along to Neil Oliver Live on GB News TV and on radio. Tonight, find out why one of the firms that produced a COVID vaccine is the subject of a Freedom of Information request. I'll meet the incredible man who's running a marathon every day this year. And in a few minutes, I'll show why pursuing net zero will condemn hundreds of millions to death. All of that and more coming up. But first, an update on the latest news from Ray Addison.
Thanks, Neil. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. The firebombing of an immigration processing centre in Dover was motivated by an extreme right-wing terrorist ideology, according to police. Counter-terrorism officers have recovered digital media devices as part of their investigation. Andrew Leake from High Wycombe is believed to have thrown up to 3 incendiary devices at the centre last weekend. However, there were no major injuries. The 66-year-old was later found dead by police at a nearby petrol station. GB News has learned that detainees armed with various weapons have caused a disturbance at an immigration centre in London. The Home Office says the incident happened in the early hours of this morning during a power cut at Harmondsworth Removal Centre. No one was injured and authorities remain at the scene. The centre currently has more than 600 immigrants being processed for removal from the UK. The United Nations chief says the world is doomed unless a historic pact is signed between rich and poor countries. The warning from Antonio Guterres comes ahead of the COP27 summit next week. Wealthy nations have already promised to find almost £88 billion a year to help poorer nations tackle climate change. The scheme was originally meant to start in 2020, but it's now not expected to happen until next year. A series of rail strikes, which were due to start today, have been called off, but the government warns there'll still be significant disruption over the next few days. The RMT stopped the walkout after securing a pay offer, which they're now negotiating. Not everyone supports the move. Former Assistant General Secretary at the RMT, Steve Headley, told us members are furious as they had no say.
In a situation where the strike's been called off and the members don't know why. And the explanations being given at the minute don't make sense. Intensive negotiations, well, what were they doing before? If there's a deal on the table, let the members have a look at it. The members will soon say yes or no.
Sinn Féin's leader says a joint authority between the British and Irish governments should be introduced if the executive in Northern Ireland cannot be restored. Mary Lou MacDonald made the comments ahead of her keynote speech at her party's conference this evening. The country has been without a functioning executive since February, as the DUP continues to boycott the Assembly over the Northern Ireland Protocol. Chair of the Northern Ireland Conservatives, Matthew Robinson, told GB News a solution must be found.
We either need a restoration of the devolved government,
or we need some form of direct rule from Westminster. We deserve proper governance in Northern Ireland. We have a collapsing healthcare system here. I mean, we are in dire straits in terms of waiting times. We are in the middle of a cost of living crisis as well, just like the rest of the UK. We need proper governance.
The French far-right party National Rally has elected a new leader to take over from Marine Le Pen. 27-year-old Jordan Bardella will replace her, marking the first time in the party's 50-year history where it's not been led by a member of the Le Pen family. Ms Le Pen says she'll now focus on leading the party's group in Parliament after taking 89 seats in the National Assembly earlier on this year. Twitter workers in the UK facing job cuts have been given 3 days to nominate a representative ahead of employment negotiations. Mr Musk has defended his decision to sack around half of the company's workforce, saying they were offered 3 months redundancy pay. Meanwhile, amid concerns over disinformation on the site, Elon Musk is adamant the company's commitment to content moderation has not been compromised. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Back now to Neil Oliver.
Remember Band Aid and Live Aid? First the charity single in December 1984, and then the stadium events in Wembley and Philadelphia in the summer of '85. BBC journalist Michael Burke had reported on a biblical famine in Ethiopia, harrowing coverage that went viral even in the years before social media. In response, musicians Bob Geldof and Midge Ure collaborated on both the single and the concerts, viewed by nearly 2 billion people in 150 countries, and a fundraising legend was born. Feed the World was the chorus of the single. Let them know it's Christmas time. Feed the world. And in our world of plenty, they sang, we can spread a smile of joy, throw your arms around the world at Christmas time. It's not Christmas time yet, of course.